Good morning, Year 12s. Welcome back. Um, Thank you for the really great work in Wednesday's lesson. People did some really good analysis of the data that they found there. A few people mentioned that they even enjoyed the website. As I mentioned, it's one of my favorites. And it was also really nice just to see people's interpretations of the families and the photos that you can see of those families. We're moving on today to looking at sustainability, which is probably a word that you've heard before and you might even be able to define it, but we're going to look at it in a bit of detail and look at what's called these three pillars or three dimensions of sustainability. And then we're going to look in a bit more detail at one of those three dimensions today, and then next week we'll continue on with the other two. In terms of what sustainability means in general, it refers to meeting the needs of the present, so people now, without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Okay, that's a really good definition of sustainability in general. What that basically means is that the things that we are using now are not taking away from the future. And I'm sure, if you think about this, that's not necessarily the case. A lot of the things we use too much of in this world are things that will not be around forever. Okay, and we'll look at more examples as we go through this. Another thing you would probably want to add to your definition is what the three dimensions or pillars of sustainability are. So when we look at sustainability, we look at economic sustainability, we look at social sustainability, and we'll look at that more next week. And then probably the one that people think of the most when we think of this word is environmental sustainability. Okay, so all the information on that slide is just a nice general definition of sustainability as a whole. Okay, so just jump in and answer question 1 once you've taken your notes on this. All right, I've got an article that I would like you to read. It's just a really good summary of sustainability, and it starts to look at the three pillars in a bit of detail. So I want you to read the article. I have hyperlinked it in the Google Doc, and then answer questions 2 to 5. It might be worth having a quick browse over what those questions are before you read it so you know what to be focusing on. All right, so we've introduced these kind of three pillars, the economic, social, and environmental. Today we're focusing on the economic sustainability, okay? And this could be kind of broken down, I guess, into looking at individuals and looking at entire countries. So at the individual level, economic sustainability means that there is adequate family incomes to afford necessities, okay? And really that should be an ongoing thing. What we mean by that, if we're looking at sustainability, it's making sure you know that money is coming every week, that you're not having to try and find money each week to afford your necessities. I think if you think back to the movie we watched, there were some really good examples in there of, having a bit of savings, but then when something goes wrong, not having anything to fall back on. That is not economic sustainability because, if the money runs out, the money runs out. At the government or country level, economic sustainability refers to ensuring that governments receive adequate funds to support their citizens. Okay, that's a really important thing. And when we look at different countries, we've already started to look at the fact that some countries support their people much better than other countries. So in Australia, we are very lucky to have a government that, even though there may be some issues, they support citizens a lot in terms of economics. These are the considerations or the things that countries generally need to have economic stability. So you do need to have these written down. I have got the slides included if you want to use it from that. But just keep in mind, we're kind of looking here at the country level, what a country needs to have to be economically stable. If you wanted to pause here and have a think of what kind of things might be included, that would be a good activity to do, but I'll go through them now. So the first thing we need is to have innovation and diversity of industries. And we've touched on this when we've looked at characteristics of low-income countries, those economic characteristics. You'll probably notice that some of these align with that. So innovation and diversity of industries. This allows countries, firstly, to keep up with technology, so with things like innovation, science, research, developing new technologies. That's really important for economic sustainability. And then also that diversity of industries. Remember, we've talked about before, relying on one industry can be really, really harmful for a country. For example, if a country relies on agriculture and then there is, say, a drought and all of the crop is destroyed, like in the movie, that can be catastrophic for some countries if they rely on that particular industry. Okay. The next consideration or factor relating to economic sustainability is employment. And remember, we're looking at the country level here. So obviously we know employment is important for individuals to meet their needs. If we're looking at the level of the country, employment means that people are paying taxes, which go to the government. Again, this relies on having good systems in place in a country that ensure that people are paying taxes and that the government is using those taxes properly. But also, lots of people being in employment means there's less poverty, which kind of has two main impacts. One is that it reduces how many people rely on social security if a government offers social security. But the other thing, if people aren't in poverty, means they are spending money. Okay, and this is a really interesting one to be looking at right now. If we look at Australia and coronavirus, at the moment we've got huge amounts of money being spent on social security for people that have lost their jobs or are unable to work at the moment. So the government is spending lots of money. There's less money coming in through taxes because less people are working, and also because a lot of people aren't really earning money, people aren't spending money. So that would be a really interesting case study to do on this, but we won't spend too much time on that. Another really important consideration is economic growth. Okay, so really what we want in countries is that their economic situation is increasing. Remember, we measure an economic situation on GNI, the gross national income, and that is looking at the average incomes divided by people. So economic growth basically is just when the GNI increases each year. And this is really important to counteract inflation. If you think about, the term inflation, if we're like inflating a balloon, it's basically just that things are getting bigger. Inflation, in a general sense, refers to the fact that every year the cost of things goes up. The value of money decreases and the cost of things increases. You don't need to know any more about that for this subject. If you do economics, you probably have a better definition than that. But because the cost of things goes up, so for example, a litre of milk used to cost 50 cents, probably 30 years ago, and now it costs $4. So the fact that costs go up means that people's income needs to go up along with that. So economic growth is really important. I've just included this. It's an interesting term that you've probably started hearing a bit on the news, recession, and talking about how Australia and the whole world is definitely going to end up in a recession after coronavirus. A recession basically means that the GDP, which is the amount of money that a whole government or country makes, decreases. Okay, so normally we get this kind of constant growth happening. A recession is when it goes down, which is going to happen all over the world for the next few years. because of things like less people working because of coronavirus, people losing their jobs, people not spending money. Okay. And the last consideration for economic stability is trade. And again, we brought this up when we looked at the characteristics of countries. Trade is important for a few reasons. So being able to trade globally means that countries are able to increase their economic growth because they can sell products that they produce and they can buy other products that maybe they need to produce more products. So trade is really, really important. And the other thing is that the trade industry itself provides employment for a lot of people. If you think about really busy ports and things like that, and shipping, even now the amount of people that are employed by being delivery drivers, all of those things produce employment, which further boosts economic stability. We'll come back to this a little bit later, but the focus as well is on fair trade. Okay, so fair trade basically means that people all along the chain of a product are being paid properly for what they do. So if we think about clothing, for example, that means that everyone involved in that process, so the person that grows the cotton, the person that then makes that cotton into yarn, the person in the factory that sews the garment together, the person in the factory that made the sewing machines, the person that packages that, the person that receives the order and sends it to the customer, the person delivering that. Every one of those people is paid properly and treated properly. Okay, that's what fair trade means. Once you've got these written down, I just want you to jump into question 6 and just kind of describe how each of these factors promotes economic stability and sustainability in a country. All right, almost towards the end now. I want you to look at these two videos. These are just two examples. There are so many examples you could look at when we look at economic sustainability. But these two are fairly close to home, and some of you might have even been to Singapore or have family there. But I want you to look at the first video, which is looking at the economic situation in Singapore. Singapore is a very high income country. And then also there's a short video that looks at Western Australia. So watch both of those videos. There's 4 questions I want you to answer. So again, just have a quick read through the questions before you watch the videos so you know what to focus on, and then come back here. All right, that's everything for today on economic sustainability. The last thing I want you to do, and this might take 5 or 10 minutes to really think about this properly, is to think of and then explain 3 ways that increasing economic sustainability in a country can impact the health and well-being for citizens of that country. In the study design, it specifies that you can relate sustainability to health and well-being. So here, remember, you want to be looking at your dimensions. I want 3 different ways. So let's try and find 3 different dimensions. So how does having economic sustainability improve 3 dimensions of health and well-being for that country's citizens? And then once you pop that in, just make sure you turn it in so I can see that you have finished it. All right, have a lovely weekend, and I will chat to you all next week. Bye.